Muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Rosy Alejandra Lara, soy coordinadora de Educación y Comunicación en SUME, Sustentabilidad para México. SUME es una asociación sin fines de lucro y además de ser el Green Building Council de México, es un espacio plural que congrega a todos los sectores de la sociedad interesados y comprometidos con el futuro sustentable de nuestro país, llevando a cabo webinars, cursos, talleres y foros, entre otras actividades durante todo el año. Bienvenidos a esta sesión titulada Resiliencia, Edificios Saludables y Estrategia ESG, GRESB, que dan prioridad a las personas. Sugerimos escribir sus dudas o preguntas en el chat para que sean respondidas al terminar la presentación de nuestra ponente. A continuación me gustaría compartirles la experiencia profesional de nuestra invitada. El día de hoy nos acompaña Kelly Worden del International Well Building Institute, aliado de SUME. Kelly es una profesional de la sostenibilidad y la salud pública, con más de 10 años de experiencia en la optimización de procesos de inversión y desarrollo inmobiliario para buscar el crecimiento a largo plazo, a través del desempeño ambiental y social. Actualmente dirigió los esfuerzos de sostenibilidad social para el International Well Building Institute, que crea y mantiene el Estándar WELL para edificios y organizaciones saludables. Anteriormente trabajó en el US Green Building Council, USGBC y GRESB para desarrollar estándares de la industria y elevar la sostenibilidad social. Este incluye el proceso integrador LEED para la promoción de la salud para uso de los profesionales de la construcción ecológica y el módulo de salud y bienestar de GRESB para uso de empresas inmobiliarias e inversores. Kelly tiene una maestría en salud pública de la Universidad George Washington y una licenciatura en biología humana de la Universidad de Texas en Austin. Dejo con ustedes a Kelly. Adelante, Kelly. Está desactivado.
Oh, here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, and apologies for not being able to give my presentation in Spanish. I'll work on some Spanish words. Maybe I can pepper into my next presentation. So I wanted to get us started. I'll also ask for your grace and forgiveness. My colleague Janera was supposed to join us, and she could have presented in Spanish, but she had a loss in the family, and so she wasn't able to join. So I'm taking on this the bulk of this presentation at sort of the last minute, but it's been kind of fun to bring in some additional content that comes from more of my public health background. So that's how I'm going to start us off. So we're talking about resilience and the built environment. As was mentioned, my background is in public health, and I focused my public health career on the sustainable real estate sector because it has such influence over health. When it comes to climate change is the largest public health threat that we face. It increases the risk of things like pandemics, which we all just experienced. And in the US, the American Public Health Association has put together some really helpful infographics that talk about this connection between climate change and health. And I'm starting with this so that we can go into a conversation from a resilience perspective. What are the types of health threats that we should be keeping in mind and addressing through a people-focused resilience plan? So this infographic has a lot of information. We'll go through each of them quickly. So one of the main ways in which climate change impacts health, unsurprisingly, would be rising temperatures. So things like the urban heat island effect can be really dangerous in certain parts of the world. It's also something that often correlates with social equity and income inequality issues as well. Something that's been well documented here in the US is the lack of green infrastructure within lower income neighborhoods, which really increases the risk of high heat, and then therefore increases the risk of these health conditions that are caused by increasing temperatures. So the way that these are laid out there on the bottom, you have things like dehydration, heat stroke, Cardiovascular illness, heat makes it much more difficult on your cardiovascular system. Respiratory illness also gets worse. And then also mental health distress and some of that cognitive functioning problems that we feel in heat as well. And we know something else that actually the EPA in the US is doing some investment in now is upgrading school buildings, for instance. Like there's still a number of schools that don't have air conditioning. And so across all of these different things, the common trend you'll see is that with climate change, increases the risks to human health from the exterior environment, which in many ways then increases our expectations of the built environment, the buildings that we operate, and the way that we design our communities to be protective against those threats. So in this case, with rising temperatures, it's going to be more important for people to have shelter with conditioned air and or find ways to use green infrastructure to really keep those temperatures down. One of the most obvious threats is extreme weather events. I firsthand experienced Hurricane Harvey years ago when I moved back to Texas and was living in Houston when Hurricane Harvey hit. And as you can see with massive hurricanes or wildfires, there's obviously the direct threat, the immediate threat that those pose to human health. But there's also the mental health distress that's part of that as well. And again, one of these things that can be made even worse by income inequality, especially when it comes to loss of property and the financial impact of some of these events. And all of those have impact on our health as well. And so extreme weather events are we know are going to increase in number. And so it's just another one of these risks that companies should be tracking and planning for. Air quality is another one with climate change and kind of negative air quality impacts of that when it comes to things like wildfires or just the pollutions and emissions themselves. Air quality is bad for our lungs, of course, but it's also bad for our cardiovascular system. There's increased risk of stroke with bad air quality. There's also, of course, increased allergies that we know are going to go up with climate change. And again, with air quality, with when the exterior air is not as good of quality, that means that the way that we're building our HVAC systems needs to take that into account to be able to filter out those pollutants so that we've got good, clean air inside. And then finally, vector-borne diseases, which we know we've got a lot of experience with this coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. The rate and risk of these is going to increase with climate change as well. So it's something for us to learn from the experience that we all collectively had, so that if and when this happens again, we've got systems in place to identify those risks and address them in a more timely fashion. So all of that was on the public health side of like why this matters, what the impact of climate change is on public health. But I want to bring us into the action orientation and sort of what this means for the private sector. We also know that incorporating health considerations into business strategy is associated with better business success over time. And so some of the things that are driving companies to interact and adopt the WELL building standard are things like enhancing their annual reporting around sustainability and ESG. There's also a level within real estate of being able to differentiate your assets. And I'll show on the next slide some stats there. And then from an employer perspective, companies are starting to think about these issues as it relates to how they interact with their employees and creating spaces that allow for people to thrive. So let's see, a year and a half ago, the International Well Building Institute released a campaign that's a really great resource, the Investing in Health Pays Back campaign. It compiles a lot of different stats from all different academic journals looking at the financial return on investment when you incorporate health strategies into both business, general business and corporate strategy, and then also on the real estate side as well. I'm highlighting the real estate ones here, given this audience. And there was a really nice study that came out of MIT a couple of years ago. It's very similar in nature to some previous studies that had been done for the green building, looking at green building certification and how green building certification was associated with asset value. We found something similar when looking at healthy building certification. So there's a 4.4 to 7.7% increase in rent premiums seen amongst buildings with a healthy building certification compared to those that did not have a healthy building certification. And in these cases, you know, the economists that are doing these studies, they're trying to control for all different factors to be able to make that sort of statement, to say that it is the certification and sort of the strategies within the certification that led to that increase in value. We've also seen increase in lease terms, and then also net present value. So lots of great stats compiled by this resource, which we're happy to share. So all of this has led to a big increase in the adoption of the WELL Building Standard, which is the largest certification and ratings platform focused specifically on healthy buildings. So this is, as of this month, we've got over 5 billion square feet, 136 countries, and a number of commercial and residential locations around the world. We've also seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, a big uptake amongst the Fortune 500 companies as well, with 173 of those companies adopting WELL. So you might be familiar with the WELL Building Standard, but just a quick overview if you're not or you're still learning. We like to talk about the WELL Standard as a library of solutions. So the WELL Standard takes all the academic research. There's over 7,000 peer-reviewed studies referenced within the WELL Standard. And it takes that research and translates it into practical tools to be applied within the real estate context and within the corporate strategy context. And those strategies that are within the WELL Standard, they're organized across 10 different concepts. So those are the things that are listed here: mind, community, movement, water, air, light, thermal comfort, nourishment, sound, and materials. Many of these are very related to how buildings are designed and operated, but then also have programmatic and organizational policy components to them as well. And so the WELL Standard has all of those different strategies there available, and there's a couple different ways that companies approach using this library, which I'll go through. Also want to highlight that we've got a long-standing partnership with the U.S. Green Building Council, and actually last year we're able to launch a streamlined path between WELL and LEED to help companies and real estate projects take an integrated approach to addressing both environmental and social sustainability. That's incredibly important when we're talking about resilience, because yes, we want to plan for the acute threats, but we also want to reduce the threat over time, right? And that is going to really require us keeping our eye on the ball in terms of GHG emissions and some of the core environmental things. So I want to emphasize that we do encourage an integrated approach, and we've got a streamlined path of certification with LEED that makes it easier for projects to apply both at the same time. And then within the WELL Standard, there is WELL certification, which is the highest level of achievement that would include strategies across all of those different concepts that I just mentioned. And then we also have ratings, and ratings are more focused on specific issues. The first rating that was developed is the one I'll talk about this afternoon, which is the WELL Health Safety Rating. It was initially in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. As you'll see, there's a lot in there that relates to general emergency preparedness. And so the WELL Health Safety Rating is really focused on exactly that, like being prepared for a variety of threats and having emergency response plans in place, and critically thinking about how that's going to impact how you operate your spaces from a health perspective. There's also the WELL Performance Rating, which is really focused on driving transparency around actual building performance. So there's a number of different features within WELL that require monitoring of air, water, everything like that. All of those features that are about monitoring performance of a space, those are within the WELL Performance Rating. And then the WELL equity rating is focused on social equity, diversity and inclusion, really focused on making sure that spaces are designed and policies are in place to make sure everyone feels welcome. So we've got these 3 different ratings as options within the broader WELL standard. The benefit of ratings is that they are a really great way to get started, especially if companies already have a specific topic in mind that they really want to focus on. But they're more efficient than pursuing WELL certification. They are designed to be earned quickly in as little as 3 to 6 months, with at times minimal capital expenditure required. And then applying for a rating across a full portfolio is really enabled through our WELL at Scale program, which I'm not going to get into too much today, but that allows companies to submit all locations within a single review process to really streamline the overall review. So getting into the WELL Health Safety Rating, as I mentioned, it really is focused on preparing for a variety of issues that might arise, and considering how that impacts both business operations and also building operations. So thinking about both sides of that. And the general premise here is that prepared businesses are resilient businesses. And there is, of course, that tie over with climate resilience that I highlighted at the start. The rating it can be applied in a variety of spaces, and we've got examples from a variety of different industries showing what that looks like. So the WELL Health Safety Rating is by far the most popular rating. It was the first rating, so that helps it out a little bit. But over 26,000 locations enrolled, over 3 billion square feet, and this is around the world. So the way that it works is you enroll within the health safety rating. You'll then be able to select the specific strategies within that rating that align with your goals, do the review, achieve the rating, and then maintain that commitment by renewing it annually with, I believe, some level of documentation, updating and review. So looking at the specific strategies, I mentioned earlier the WELL standard that has the 10 concepts. Each of the ratings, they kind of pull from those different concepts in different ways, and they've got their own top line categories of issues that they address. For the health safety rating, really focused on air and water quality, stakeholder engagement and communication, health resources, emergency preparedness, and cleaning procedures. And we'll go through each of these a little bit further. I intentionally put emergency preparedness as the first one here. It's, I think, really important for companies to start with some of the strategies that are within this section, because they allow you to create that overall plan and really based off of what your unique threats that you might be exposed to are. So developing that emergency preparedness plan within the business continuity plan, that feature involves actually looking at your business operations and identifying various risks that might disrupt operations, and then having a plan to overcome those. Healthy reentry is focused on going back into spaces after they've been closed. They could be closed for a variety of reasons. This is another one of those overlays with climate resilience. After an extreme weather event, what are the steps that need to be taken to ensure that spaces are healthy and safe to operate and return to? There's also some good community facing components of some of these features as well when it comes to emergency resources and emergency resilience, thinking about how individual real estate assets could support the community around them in times of crisis, and then also establishing health entry requirements that speaks to if there are vaccine requirements or other sort of screening requirements that might be necessary. Stakeholder engagement and communication is also really important, especially in times of emergency. And so a couple of features here that support that communication and transparency. So it allows users of a building to understand what actually, what has gone on in that space, and what strategies are being taken to protect the health and safety of the people in those spaces. Air and water quality management. So This one speaks to ventilation, ensuring proper ventilation is in place, which is important in times of respiratory illness like we saw during COVID. Also increasingly important with climate change and varying air quality levels outside, as I talked about previously. There's a component of this of Legionella management, which again speaks to being able to safely re-enter buildings after they've been dormant for a while, making sure that there haven't been any pathogens that have arisen within the building systems during that time, and then monitoring that quality, air and water quality, on an ongoing basis. Cleaning and sanitation procedures, probably not surprising given the origin of this rating. This is where things around hand washing, surface contact, cleaning practices. Also, though, when we're doing increased cleaning, making sure that we're using good products that are not bad, that are not going to do additional harm to the environment or people, because there's also a lot of toxic exposures associated with cleaning products as well. So being intentional about the types of products that we're using, and then also reducing respiratory particle exposure. And then also a component of this is the health service resources, and this speaks to that mental health impact of climate change or extreme events in general. So this section contains more corporate policies that would be around sick leave. We don't want people coming into the office sick because that makes other people sick, health benefits, and also mental health recovery. So we've got a variety of companies that have adopted the WELL Health Safety Rating, and you can see a number of those logos here. And then again, highlighting this one, given the audience, looking at specifically some real estate developer achievements. Some of these companies have done the WELL at scale approach, where they've taken full portfolios through and achieved certifications all at once. I believe Hines is one of those with 120 assets. Brookfield Properties as well with 231 assets that they have achieved the health safety rating at. And here is a quote from Hines, from Clayton Ulrich, who's Senior Vice President for Corporate Operations and Engineering Services, just highlighting that their use of the WELL Health Safety Rating is a way that they demonstrate commitment to being an industry leader in health and safety, and really wanting to look out for the health and well-being of the people that are in the buildings that they operate. Similarly, Brookfield Properties highlighting that for their tenants and visitors, they view this being able to have that rating and that seal on the door as a way of driving transparency and creating a sense of safety amongst the people that use their spaces. And so this transparency conversation sort of nicely goes into a conversation around ESG and sustainability reporting and the way that we're able to support companies in that. So here's a couple of different looks at how companies have incorporated WELL into their ESG and sustainability reporting. Some companies are highlighting the number of people impacted by their WELL engagement. CBest Property did that in their 2022 report, or highlighting that their enrollment in WELL at scale impacts 19,000 people. There's also specific WELL milestones that companies are highlighting. Ferris Residential highlighting that they achieved the health safety rating, and they also achieved the WELL equity rating. And then we also give out annual awards, which companies have highlighted in their reporting too. So Investa highlighting that they received the WELL Portfolio Award in 2021. For companies that are engaging with us through the WELL at Scale program, which is that program allowing for portfolio level application of the WELL standard, we provide customized reports every year in the first quarter, as early as we possibly can, to be able to inform our clients' sustainability reporting. So we're basically on our end summarizing everything that a company has done with WELL over that year and to date, but also very critically highlighting that calendar year, as oftentimes that's what companies are reporting on through their sustainability reports. We're packaging up all that information in a way that companies can just plug it right into their ESG and sustainability reporting. And so that'll show their different levels of achievement across the WELL concepts. And then there's also benchmarking information, allowing companies to track their performance relative to their peers and really aim for some of that incremental improvements on an annual basis. We also have a reporting guide that highlights how companies are using WELL within both their ESG and sustainable finance efforts, and also has tips on how to approach the reporting process. And then one of the real tangible ways that we help companies with this is through alignments with leading frameworks. So we've got an alignment with the UN SDGs, and this allows companies to talk about how their achievements with WELL align with some of the goals that they have in terms of SDG achievements. And we've got this down to the WELL feature level, and so we're able to help even provide, in many cases, like language that companies could use in their reporting to talk about how their use of WELL aligns with some of these larger global goals. This slide here highlights some of the different alignments that we have. We elevate the SDG that is, of course, the most relevant to us is SDG 3, focused on health and well-being. And we've got a couple of examples of features that really align with that. Of course, all of the WELL standard is related to health in some way or another, but some features have a real bang for their buck in terms of how they're structured. Another relevant SDG is sustainable cities and communities. And there's a number of relevant features there, like the promote community engagement feature within the community concept, and also ensuring local access to healthy, sustainable foods. And then finally, gender equality. This is where a lot of the features within the WELL equity rating are very much aligned with this goal. Some examples are features around promotion of health benefits, and then also some things that relate to building design as well in terms of accessible universal design. And then we also have an alignment documented with the GRESB real estate assessment. So we've got about 40% alignment between the WELL building standard and the 2024 GRESB real estate assessment. I lead with that because that's the most impactful way that we align with GRESB. 40% alignment with the assessment means you've got lots of different opportunities within GRESB to improve your performance in ways that WELL could help with. So within the management component, for those that are familiar, the GRESB assessment, it's an annual ESG benchmark used by real estate portfolios. Many institutional investors require that the funds that they invest in report through GRESB, and investors use that information to inform their investment strategy. The GRESB real estate assessment is split into 3 different components, and depending on the nature of the fund, that will decide which one of these components that fund participates in, but all funds do the management component. So every fund does the management component, and then if you are a fund focusing on existing buildings and existing assets, you'll do the performance component. If you're focused on new development and construction, you'll do the development component. But management is for everybody because they all require a certain level of management. And within the management component, WELL aligns with 33 GRESB indicators. Performance component, we've got 27 indicators that we align with, and then the development component, we've got 23 GRESB indicators. So we've got a spreadsheet that makes this all very easy to navigate and figure out. And then in addition, within the GRESB building certification aspect, that's where the actual achievement of a third-party certification will get you some credit within GRESB too. So WELL certification is worth a full point there, and then the various ratings are worth a partial point. What we've seen companies do here is actually use the GRESB alignment to inform their strategy for WELL at scale every year. So every year within WELL at scale, when portfolios are using WELL across their entire portfolio, they might use this GRESB alignment to say which components of the GRESB assessment do we really want to make sure we get points on this year, and let's find WELL features to help us get there. And or there's sometimes where companies are doing things with WELL that they might not have included in their GRESB assessment, and so it can help both ways. And that is all I had prepared for y'all, so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Here is one question from Oscar Husin Romero. He asks, as you know, there are certification for people related to lead topics, which are provided by the USGBC. Is there any certification for people in WELL topics? Could you recommend some particular?
I think, is he referring to like the lead AP, like the accredited professional? And so then the WELL AP would be relevant to you there. And I didn't highlight it when I shared this, but let me see if I can pull my screen back up. Sometimes, oops. There, on that slide that I showed, there was a call out of the number of WELL APs that we have, because I actually don't know the full number. But yes, I think that the WELL accredited professional would be the credential that you're looking for. That's basically a way to demonstrate that you have you have understanding of the WELL standard, and then you would be able to work on a WELL project. We also have in terms of continuing education opportunities, we have the WELL Forum, which was launched last year. And that's where all of the IWBI created educational content is. And that is free to join as well. I'll put the link in the chat so you can check it out.
Okay. Is there any question in the audience? Oops. Well, I think that's all the question we have now.
Yeah, well, let us know if any questions come up. I'll also just put a few more links here. This one is for the financial return on investment. So there's a full PDF document that compiles lots of different research and good statistics there that I have been using. We have a partnership with GRESB that's allowed me to run some roundtables on social sustainability around the world. And I've been using stats from that campaign and have found that there's still not a lot of familiarity with the fact that we have some of that research documenting the financial return. So I've been sharing it as much as I can. And then this is the landing page for the health safety rating as well. If you'd like to find out anything more about that, then please let us know.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kelly, for sharing all the time, all this knowledge. And muchas gracias a todos por asistir a esta sesión. Recuerden seguirnos en nuestras redes sociales para que se enteren de nuestra oferta educativa y nuestras colaboraciones con el International WELL Building Institute. Y no olviden sumarse a SUME en las siguientes actividades. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Good afternoon.